I would say one of the things that really helped me was just starting with mindset. That was the key thing, and I know people on here probably heard that over and over, but it truly is one of those things that is the foundational piece. Because for me, growing up in Section 8 housing, single mother, fraternal twin brother, is that the beliefs that were drowned into me just were not statistically, I actually should not be sitting in this chair where I'm at, and then let alone where I've been able to go in my entrepreneur journey. So I had to remove a lot of that garbage, for lack of a better words, and replace it with more empowering beliefs. So that's the core of every that I would say big takeaway from the book.
Hey, this is the Yield Coach Show, Season 1, Episode 22. I'm your host, Ian Brown, and every episode, as always, we bring you dynamic entrepreneurs, real estate investors, business leaders, and inspirational guests ready to open up, share their story, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so you can gain lessons, advantages, and accelerate your own success. A couple of housekeeping announcements. We do have our video course available, Employee to Entrepreneur, as well as our ebook, Agent to Investor, for all you real estate agents looking to pivot into investment or add investment. Very excited about today's guest. We're lucky to have, such a heavy hitter today. We have Mr. Sterling White, and I'm going to give you some of his information. It's very impressive. We can dive in deeper, but Sterling has been a multifamily investor in the Midwest, managing over $10 million in capital, deployed over $16 million in portfolio. He's been on Bigger Pockets as a contributor with 200 posts since 2014. I think I have like 8 posts. That's great. He's been
growing now, and growing for you.
I'm sure. And he's been featured on other podcasts, big ones such as Bigger Pockets, Grant Cardone, Jake and Gino, Joe Fairless, and countless others. And just to top things off, he is the author of 0 to 400 Units. Sterling, welcome to the show.
Yes, appreciate being on. Everyone, go ahead and strap your seatbelts in, because we're going to take you along for a ride.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. All right. Well, let's get going, Sterling. Give us a little about yourself. Let's kick it off.
Yeah, so born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, not so good parts of the city, where investors tend to shy away from for long-term buy and holds. But everyone's got their own philosophy when it comes to that. But you just never knew is if you were going to make it to the next day. And I remember there was one point is that I grew up single mother, welfare, food stamps, that both my brother and I were 5 years old. We're sitting at the kitchen table, Ian, and as soon as we go upstairs, a bullet comes right through the back patio where we were sitting. And yeah, I remember that happening, and it was just, okay, well, just the next day, it was, because that was pretty frequent, those types of events. And then luckily ended up moving out of that environment and moving out to more the suburbs, which was a life changer from that. Still was in lower income housing, but definitely completely different surrounding. And from that, just fast forward how I got into real estate is I started as a laborer, but I read the book. It's going to be pretty common, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that was the light bulb that I ended up getting, that rich and wealthy people did not get that way by actually being laborers. So I started buying properties and investing. Bought my very first property, no money out of pocket, bought 150 single families, and then ended up transitioning to multifamily, got to just about 500 units.
That's amazing. And you're right, that purple book, as a lot of us call it, that Rich Dad, Poor Dad and cash flow quadrant thereafter, I mean, it's so plainly written, it's so inspirational, it resonated with me, resonated with you, and then it just, we can get into it later, but just inspiring you to take that first step and not to think, well, I'll speak for myself, but I stopped thinking about people that had wealth as all that different than me. They were just taking different action steps, and they were looking at that quadrant, and they're building the asset column, and they were spending their money differently than everybody, and they were spending their time differently than everybody. All right, well, I just can't imagine growing up with, your health and safety at risk, and, not thinking much about a bullet flying into your home. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm excited to see, what you've done.
Well, and I just want to mention on this, and this is key when it comes to the mindset, is how I use that environment. Instead of a crutch, I used it as fuel. And I remember Earl Nightingale talks about this story. There's two brothers. one is incarcerated. He takes a whole different path in life, prison, drugs, all this. And then the other one ends up making something out of himself. And someone asked them the question, how did you get to where you were? And they said, because our dad, and their dad was an alcoholic, all these. But that just goes to show that, one, how you can easily just take your mindset and take certain scenarios and how you can actually leverage those.
I totally agree. I had I haven't really talked about this much on the show, maybe your first couple episodes, but about 12 years ago, 2009, my dad passed away unexpectedly at 59. He was in good health, and he died in his sleep, and it was a big surprise. And so he was the cornerstone of our family. He was an attorney. He's a big pillar, like in our local church, and he was just a big presence, and like in our community and in our family, he was like the keystone. And so for me, I'm the oldest of four boys, and I kind of had like a decision to make right there. Of course, I was very sad. I was like outside of myself with grief and beside myself, but coming out of that, let's say, a couple weeks go by, the funeral's over, everything's kind of started to settle down. Not for me, but we're done with all of our services, and I was like, I needed to decide, like, I don't want this to define me negatively. Dad was a great man. I really could let this like mess up my whole life and trajectory. And what I did is, eventually, probably within 90 days of his passing, I used that as fuel just to be a better person. Some of it emulating him, but he had a big life, and I was like, you know what, I wanted to have a big life as well, and ended up taking the LSAT and going to law school, and that's all part of my journey. But picked up some education. Truth be told, the audience knows I'm not sure I needed it all, but either way, it gave me the confidence to roll into what I've done. And but to your point, I mean, we all have decisions to make, and sometimes it's the same fact pattern, and you just go in a divergent path off of those same circumstances.
And my question for you, Ian, is: do you believe everyone has those moments in life, whether it's an aha moment, light bulb, or that where it's really that moment that happens in life, and either you take this fork in the road and you take this fork in the road, and many people actually take the incorrect fork, for lack of better words?
I do agree. I think that not everybody has. I'm going to back up a little bit. We all have like struggles and pivot points. Yours, I mean, pretty extreme. Mine are fairly extreme, but I mean, people do lose parents. Mine was just relatively young. I think that the people that we see like really achieving, depending on how you define it, but in our investment arena, and like I'll call it wellness, happiness, comfortable in their own skin, really striving for more, for like an intrinsic passion, purpose. I feel like those people have some big hurdle in their story where it's like it wasn't just smooth sailing. So to your point, I think you got these divergent paths, but the ones that really excel, a lot of them had some big pivotal moment in their story where they decided to use that as like a trampoline instead of just, going down in the gutter. So
understood.
Yeah. We know a little bit about your background. I heard you say you started in single family. I know that moving from, single family into multifamily, it can be a daunting task for a lot of people because they can get their minds around buying a single family home, placing a tenant. I think part of why it's so straightforward, the lending is essentially the same. Placing a tenant is a regular person. I don't think it's a great idea, but you could place a friend in there if you wanted to.
Oh, no, please not.
I know.
That, but or family. It could get a little rocky. But yeah.
I think people put two and two together. They're like, okay, I can figure out, like, here's my down payment. I know pretty much what rent should be. I've owned my own home. I can do a rental. But I think it's a big jump to go into, let's say 5 or more units where the lending changes, the dynamics change. Although I will say, as an anecdote, I've noticed a lot more loan programs now from like 1 to 20 units that function more like your traditional rental loans. But we'll save that for another topic. For most of us at 5 units, once you get above 4, the lending is going to change and the players are going to change.
Yeah. And it's considered commercial too, anything over 5 units.
Correct. So, I know for you to scale, let's go into the transition from single family to multifamily and kind of talk about how that particularly, and then kind of moving into the scale topic.
Yeah, one, having that many single families and self-managing is I actually have a hat on right now because I don't have much hair due to that. And it was one of those things. Took a step back and decided, okay, well, this model isn't as scalable. It was a lot of moving parts. And meaning is that those 150 single families, it wasn't just 1, 2, or 3 transactions. It was closer to about 120 transactions. So it was a lot of one-offs. And if lucky, would get a package of 2 to 3, but that was very rare. So it was a lot of one-offs. And in order to get those one-offs you would have to look at 15, 20, 25 deals to get to that. And then just all of the marketing involved, and then the self-management piece, this property over here, So then took a step back. Okay, what model is even more scalable? And then it was just a no-brainer when it came to multifamily. And that very first deal was actually a 46 unit, and took the driving for dollars approach. Saw a property that needed work. Parking lot looked like an alligator's back. It was very bland, and called the owner directly, and they were motivated and moved forward from there.
I love that you did that. I'm a big fan. So I got my real estate license 16 years ago, but the driving for dollars part, I think a lot of people now, they want to kind of hide behind like social media, the cold texting, which is kind of becoming, illegal, the ringless voicemail, the blasting all the snail mail. I'm not going to say that you won't be able to convert off of those leads, but nothing can replace, like, Sterling calls you, and I don't know exactly what you said. So Ian Brown calls you. Ian Brown, Yield Coach Capital. Hey, just want to introduce myself. I bought a property in the neighborhood. We're looking to expand. If you're ever interested, here's my number. In the meantime, I'm going to email you sales comps for your asset class and your zip code for the past 3 years. Because multifamily owners don't even always know like what's traded. You can't just go on Zillow and get some algorithm value. If you own a 46 unit, you need to like call a broker, hope they give you an accurate number that's not just trying to incentivize you to sell. So that was just my thing. I used CoStar. I exported everybody in that asset class, and my town is huge. It's Jacksonville, Florida, so it's overwhelming. But I just would highlight in Excel. This is a few years back. Technology is a little better. 20, and my goal was just to get through 20 a day back then. Mm-hmm. And I would just use like White Pages Premium or different sources for kind of skip tracing. And my goal was just to introduce myself. If I could get 20 people a day, and sometimes I couldn't. But before you know it, you look back after a month or two, even if you don't hit all your goals every day, and you've touched a lot of people, and by calling them, that's the hard work, right? And you're not just like, oh, I'm calling on behalf of Sterling or this capital group. You're like, no, I am Sterling, or I am Ian, I am the investor. And I think just calling people with like honesty and character and not being pushy and then sharing information, I just think it's old school, but it goes a long ways.
Yeah, that was the exact approach that I took. And then, when it comes to single family and doing the text blast, and then the which you mentioned, it's really great, especially nowadays. And then using those strategies when it comes to multifamily, it's very you're trying to scale the unscalable, in my personal opinion. It's more beneficial, especially in, let's say, Jacksonville, if you're targeting apartments between 75 to 150 units, or let's say, or 50 to 150, then there's only a finite of those that are actually built. So that's one thing, is that it's even more optimal for you to be zero-like focused in your actual efforts. And that's what allowed me to do better than the competitors who were trying to take that more scalable approach. Because there's a bigger payoff, and then also it's good now at this point, since your list is so niche down, that you can actually go above and beyond and actually invest more time in the follow-up, and then also direct marketing, etc., is a way just to stay top of mind and really build that relationship.
I totally agree, and I've heard it called like the rifle approach versus like the shotgun approach. And to your point, you really don't need a shotgun. If you know, let's use your example, 50 to 150 units, one city, and let's narrow it a little bit more. Like maybe you want like
1970s construction.
Boom.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, if 1970s concrete block, whatever. Well, now you've probably shrunk it down. Even in Jacksonville, that's probably under 1,000 assets. I'm in a big city. So, but even that, you start doing 20 a day. Okay, every 5 days you just did 100. It doesn't take long to get through everybody. And then I'm not great at this, but I've heard some people doing well with like I'll call it gift giving, but really giving the owners something where like they might hang on to it. Maybe it's personalized and makes them think of you. But you would never do that in a shotgun approach. But in asset classes specific to what you're targeting, I think it's a great approach. And I'll just speak for myself. I never liked, and I did appraisal, which is kind of volume based, even commercially with the narrative reports. You really need to hustle and grind, and you're fairly capped at what you can make. The banks are only going to pay so much for the report. Wonderful experience, fundamental to my success. However, I learned in my 20s, I'm not good. I don't excel at things that are volume based. I won't say I can't do them. Like I can caffeinate myself and go, but I need to do like high margin activities that I can kind of show my like character for, my depth and my layers a little bit. If it's just all about like hitting something kind of small 1 million times a day,
Walmart,
I'm not cut
as
out
an
for
example. Walmart versus some luxury brand that costs even more, but you got the value in between you got the value or the perceived value based upon the brand name.
Yeah, and it was like, doing meaningful multifamily, or when I still broker some, but I'd rather do investment real estate. I used to appraise a lot of hotels, so I'll still broker some hotels here and there, apartments, entitled land. And so I have kind of a unique background, but I'd rather do things that require like a little more real estate between the ears and a little more vision versus like nothing. And I have a lot of friends that sell residential real estate, and I occasionally will broker a residential deal. But I just am not drawn to cranking through as many residential transactions as I can and trying to hit new KPIs. I'm just not suited for it. So anyways, I think that you and I are probably, aligned that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's a completely different model. There's more moving pieces with it, more employees that you have to have with that is when it comes to managing people, you got to deal with politics. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole. I realized quickly that I just did not enjoy managing people, and actually hired someone in who did enjoy that. But that's just one of the things you have to deal with when you're doing quite a bit of volume.
Man, you and I are more and more the same. So I have stayed really small. My very first mentor, he's actually my appraisal mentor, but he had scaled at one point, I think, to 6 offices up and down the East Coast. And he's like, Ian, I'm going to tell you now, you either want to get really big or stay really small. You're going to kind of die in no man's land you're going to have high carrying and payroll and drama, and you're not going to have the revenue to support it. You just need to get real big in staff or stay real small. And I've just decided to do my local deals, build my personal portfolio, about 100 units and 7 Airbnbs, and we got this 83 unit apartment in Georgia, and life is good. And but that would not be sufficient for like a whole company. So I would, if I would need to get probably up to 400 or 500, probably have a goal of 1,000 units, and then I could carry a staff, maybe bring in construction and management if we were going to scale. But with the way I do it now, I have a lot of flexibility, a lot of freedom and control, and that was my goal going in. That's an interesting topic, though. How have you partnered, or do you bring in capital partners or other GP or like operational partners? How do you, as you scaled, how did you like to set it up?
So how it worked originally into the latest deal, but more so primarily is everything was just done in-house. So that also allowed to have more control, but everything was in-house, from finding the deal and then also financing the deal and then raising the capital to then close on the deal as well. Everything was in-house.
Can you give any tips? I do think this audience would benefit from just, a little truncated tip on capital raising. I think, we had a guest on who locally is, it's the JWB company. They have like 3,000 lots, like just sitting right now to develop. They've done thousands of like speculative rental homes that they package and sell. They're kind of ahead of the build for rent trend. Anyways, they're around our age and they've raised a lot of money and have a great track record. I've always found, my deals have been like with me and a partner and my own money, maybe a little bit of like secondary loans or like, wraps, but on a capital raise, did you have any issue kind of getting over trepidations or fear about just asking people to invest in your deals?
No, and this helped from brainwashing myself, for lack of better words, and on the self-improvement side, because I ended up removing a lot of limiting beliefs that I had, and I had another pivotal moment. I'll just share this one quickly. When I trained for a Guinness World Record for the world's fastest fireman carry mile, and just fast forward through the whole year and a half, it was the day of the actual attempt, and what I'm supposed to do is carry someone and I'm not a fireman, by the way, and carry them for the distance of a mile, and I had to beat the time 11 and a half minutes. And so everything's official. There's recording, there's a ref and everything there, and then the gun. And this is a big not publicity event, but it was on the news and everything. So there's a lot of people who actually showed up, a good amount. And so the gun goes off. I drop the person at 800 meters, which is halfway through the attempt. And if their feet touch the ground once the attempt starts, it's over. But the biggest thing that happened for me in that moment, Ian, was that I realized that I had the biggest fear of failure, and since then is that fear was just ultimately removed. And so that was one of the things that really helped, is that, as you mentioned, that I didn't have fear such as, and I looked at it as not asking people for money. I actually took a different angle, is that I was providing them an opportunity, because many of them is their money was just sitting anyway. So why not offer them a opportunity to actually invest and make that money work for them? So that was one of the things that really helped me, is it really started with mindset. And then I didn't have what many people believe, that, well, I don't want to ask Uncle Joe Smo for money or anything. I didn't start with my own family. I actually partnered with someone who taps into their own family as well.
I think that's really good advice, kind of seeing it, the abundance mentality versus the scarcity, where it's like, I'm bringing you an opportunity. I'm not bringing you like a liability and a risk. And you had, I'm sure you had a reasonable track record before you ever brought people on. So I think the opportunity that's what's going to resonate with me after the show, is you're bringing somebody an opportunity. So I really like that. I saw in your bio, that have you done anything? I see that, going from Section 8 housing to 500. Do you invest in any HUD or Section 8, or is that outside of how your portfolio operates? So
I strictly do workforce housing, so just market rate. I did Section 8, and it was just I'm not a big fan of the government, and I know I said that out loud. Okay. I need to drink some tea. I need to put my tinfoil hat on when I actually say not a fan of the government. But is that just wasn't a model that I was interested in, so no involvement with it.
Yeah, I did. I've sold these units, but I had 40. Let's talk 1955 to 1975 concrete block, C class, probably C minus, multifamily, and I bought them both within like 4 months of each other, and I inherited some Section 8, and then I had to decide. So I had to do enough learning to do the Section 8 that was already in the property. So I was like, well, maybe I'll bring on some more. And I don't know if this is nationally true, but I'll just put that caveat on there. But my biggest challenge was, if I bring somebody with a voucher, and the voucher is the Section 8 voucher, it just operates like cash. They bring me a voucher. Let's say I advertise a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. They bring me a voucher, and let's just say the rent is $850. They bring me a voucher for $850, or maybe a little bit less. If it's less, they have to personally cover the gap, and the local housing authority is going to direct deposit the rent that's on the voucher. And now that's beautiful. That direct deposit, it never misses. And I was like, wow. What got me was, in between two things. In between tenants, there's an inspection. And the inspections, in my opinion, were inconsistent. And so I might have had a unit that was passed year over year, and all of a sudden I get an inspector that says, oh, this jalousie window won't crank, and it doesn't open all the way, so that window fails. You can't rent this unit. When I can't come back to see it again, if you can find the part to fix that 60-year-old window, and I can't come back to see it for 3 weeks.
Exactly.
And so now you're vacant. Yep. Yeah. And then the other thing that I had a hard time with Section 8, and I would love people to reach out to me after the show and tell me why they love Section 8, but my other challenge was the voucher can change without me being involved during their tenancy. So let's say they bring me a voucher, I work with the housing authority, we bring them in on a 12-month lease. Let's say it's a full voucher, $850 for that 2-bedroom. Well, if the tenant has a change in status during their tenancy, well, the change might be like a part-time job or whatever happens, alimony, child support, something that triggers. boom, now their voucher could go down because they have their own supplemental income. And now my $850 voucher, without, this is during the tenancy, at least in Jacksonville, it shrunk down to, let's say, $300. I had one go to like $125, and then now I have to collect the.
Oh, okay, I think you were about to say this. So is it goes down, it was formerly $850 and it goes down to $300, but then that difference of $500 you would now get from the tenant.
And as we both know, I didn't really underwrite the tenant. I'm getting a voucher. The whole point, and I'm looking for maybe violent crimes, felonies, and evictions. But if they pass, like, I'm not even doing a detailed like credit check on a voucher tenant because the money's coming from the housing authority, direct deposit. I just really want to make sure they're nonviolent and don't have evictions, and so I'm not so worried about like debt to income or credit. The problem is, and maybe this is the lesson. The problem is when that voucher slides during your lease term, now I have to go to the tenant for the balance of $500, and they know it. I mean, they have a job, but I never underwrote that person to be paying me directly. And what if they've been on a voucher for years, and this is the first time they've had to actually pay landlord out of their pocket? It's a different animal, and I quickly ran into delinquency. And then I had to do my eviction and explain to the housing authority, why this is happening, even while they make their partial payment from the housing authority. And so I'll stop on this, but let's just say I had mixed reviews on doing the HUD in Section 8. I do think that the people that do it well, they do it more in scale, and they're probably a little bit better at vetting those voucher tenants. I think I probably looked at the voucher just on its face. I saw the amount, I saw the duration. Let's go, and so there's probably some lessons there.
Yeah, people make it work. It's just another moving piece in how I live life and also run businesses. I like to keep it as simple as possible and avoid as many moving pieces as I can, and that's just another layer to add to the already complexities oftentimes that you get with investing. Investing is simple, but there's also quite a bit of moving parts that you just have to be wary of, and that situation that you mentioned is just one of those things that's out of your control, and I like to have as many things or avoid as many things that are out of my control because I can't control those.
Yeah. Obviously, you're a man that's good at building teams, inspirational. You're doing these carries, and you wrote your book, 0 to 400 Units. What are some, and of course, everyone should get the book. Did you do it on Audible by chance? Did you ever narrate it?
Yes, I did do it on Audible. So I did it on Audible and wrote it as well. It was quite a bit of an undertaking, and oh man, it was. I'm definitely glad I was able to get it done and put it out there, but it was much more than I expected.
Now, did you, and it's okay if you didn't, did you narrate it with your own voice?
Yeah, with my own voice.
Yeah, because I just, some people, they write a good book, but they're not confident to like read it for Audible.
I've got the radio voice, so I had to do it.
Oh, it's the best voice I think we've had so far. It's awesome. So, all right, because I'm more of an Audible than physical. Sometimes I've heard people say they'll actually do Audible like with the physical book in their hand, and it almost like gives you two forms of like input. But anyways, I might check yours out on Audible. I just renewed my account. So anything from that book, like some takeaways that you might say for 400 units, and it sounds like you might have gone higher than that. Any takeaways you want to drop on the audience kind of from that journey or that scale?
I mean, there were so many takeaways, the good and the bad, the ugly, as you mentioned earlier, which I really need to rewatch that movie. But, oh man, where do I go? I would say one of the things that really helped me was just starting with mindset. That was the key thing. And I know people on here probably heard that over and over, but it truly is one of those things that is the foundational piece. Because for me, growing up in Section 8 housing, single mother, fraternal twin brother, is that the beliefs that were drowned into me just were not statistically, I actually should not be sitting in this chair where I'm at, and then let alone where I've been able to go in my entrepreneur journey. So I had to remove a lot of that garbage, for lack of a better words, and replace it with more empowering beliefs. So that's the core of every that I would say big takeaway from the book. And then also being self-aware of my strengths, and then also weaknesses as well, and surrounding people around that complemented my weaknesses and I complemented their strengths, but also being vulnerable and open for one of my strengths that I thought, or one of the things that I wanted to work on to be a strength, that managing people. I'll give you a prime example. Jacob, shout out to him, good friend and business partner, is that one of the things is that I wanted to be a manager of people for, I don't know what it was. I just always wanted to be that and be able to develop people. And I remember at one point is that he just said, you're just not a good manager, because it was just one of those things. I was really hard on people, and just the way I operate is just not one of the things that I enjoy. So it really was one of those things that just lifted a ton of weight off of me. So what I would say is understanding your strengths and weaknesses, and then being open to people critiquing you, people that are close to you, and then that will allow you to grow even more.
I think that's tremendous advice. It's interesting. I was filling out just a quick little dashboard thing to be on another podcast, and it just happens to be sitting right here. And the first thing that I wrote down was become self-aware, know your traits, strengths, weaknesses, and then I talk about some spending habit stuff just as like the top. But I feel like if you don't, you have all these goals, like I want 1,000 units, I want this much cash flow a month, I want whatever it is, I want this car. It's not a very good goal, but whatever your goals are, and they don't stop to take like a personal accounting. What are you good at? Have you even thought about yourself? Where are you strong? Where are you weak? Have you taken any personality tests? Have you ever done like a disc profile or read rocket fuel, or are you visionary? Are you integrator? Do you know much about yourself? What's your track record? What do your close friends think of you? Like you said, Sterling, it's like, and be open to that critique. And I think the Who Not How book, which I can see it from now, the yellow book, and the rocket fuel, it's like, I like those books because it reminded me it doesn't actually matter where you fall. It's more a matter of identifying where you are. Yep. And I think that, well, I'll just speak for myself. I think that I was like, I need to fall here because this is where like the apex dude, this is where he falls. This would be like his disc profile. This is like how he would operate. Some of those things, I was not Mr. Apex. And so it was like, be comfortable with that and supplement and partner. It's a big world, and as we're in this business longer, we have more and more colleagues and friends and professionals. Build that dream team. And that was my takeaway, is like, just don't beat yourself up over where you fall on these charts, but take it to heart. Also, don't dismiss it like, oh, this says I'm an integrator, but I have great ideas. Well, maybe.
Yeah, and that's just fighting. It's tough, and it's great, but just what I've learned from others is they're self-aware and where they end up falling, and that just goes back, and I'll say it was Gary Vee, that one of the people that, this was earlier in my days, that he was someone who I was able to get quite a bit of knowledge, and he was always talking about the skill set that he had was really being good at managing and developing people. And that was one of the things that I kept, okay, I need to have that skill set because he has that skill set and he's been able to build to that point. But then this goes back to what you were saying, is that it's okay that you fall on this side of the spectrum or wherever you fall. You just have to make that work and build around that and find someone who does have those skill sets. So that's just me sharing that and looking back, that for someone who's on here who may be in that same scenario, that's how I ended up navigating that. Hopefully that made sense for someone. Someone will understand exactly where I was going with that.
Certainly. And I think that, just to linger on that topic a little bit longer, I got, the concept of identity, we develop it without even really thinking about it. Because of my past, and I was doing, I was an appraiser. So like a commercial appraiser, I walk properties, I interview owners, I run comps, and then commercially I do Excel spreadsheets and discounted cash flows for income producing real estate. And so it's very analytical. A lot, other than the property visit and the interview, most of your time is spent like in quiet. I used to burn a candle sometimes and sit there and have my screens up and I'm doing my spreadsheets. And
were you sitting Indian style too? With the burning candle.
I got to work on my flexibility, but yeah, I would love to get Indian, or like on a Bosu ball,
Exactly.
Exactly. But oh god, it's funny. I had to get past the fact that I got competent, or probably better than competent, at underwriting and running Excel models. I never actually liked it. And so it's like, it's good that I learned it, and it's good that I can underwrite, and I'm really good at like jumping in and out of people's models because I had to do that for appraisal. I had to, if the owner gives me this, I got to check it out and put it into mine. So like I got pretty quick at like just spotting nonsense and figuring out where like back of the envelope values are real fast. And then of course you got to drill down. But I've come to the conclusion, as I sit here at my current age, I would happily just review somebody else's work, let them sit Indian style with the candle running their spreadsheets, because it doesn't give me any fulfillment. Although I can do it, I don't enjoy it. It's just something I learned to do for 5 or 6 years of my life. That's just an anecdote, but I mean, that could be anything. You're like, well, I used to be this coach, or I used to be whatever, but it turns out I actually like being quiet and running. I mean, it could go either direction. So I think like that self-assessment thing that we talked about, the self-awareness, I think is really critical if you want to go anywhere. You can't just draw your arrow and shoot if you don't really know, kind of who you are, what you are.
Yeah, and that could open up Pandora's box when it comes to doing things that you only do enjoy, because there are parts of the business where you have to do things that you don't enjoy, but you want to get to a point to hire people in to only do those things, or you shouldn't just be doing that at all, and you should be in an entirely different field. But then that answers the question: is does that field give you enough income to be able to live? And then so it just opens up quite a bit of questions, and that's more so why I've taken a lot of the path of just studying philosophy, because it allows me to just be not only just aware on the business side, but just on the world. And I've changed a lot of my lens and how I actually view it, and it's just really just raised another awareness for me.
I've actually, and I have 3 children. 2 are young, 1 and 3, about to be.
These are the ones you're aware of, though, Ian.
Real aware of. The old one, she drives. She's a junior in high school, and she has 2 jobs, and anyway, she's beautiful, lovely, but the young ones are all over me, and I'm trying to really soak that in. And I've just spent more time probably reflecting on, for lack of a better term, happiness or wellness. And I won't say it's controversial, but in the hustle culture and the grind culture, it can run a little cross with happiness and wellness. So I do like to be around guys that are a little more philosophical, a little more self-aware, and looking at the world more broadly in their lives and where they fit more broadly than what's my unit count, what's my cash flow, what's my balance sheet, what's my team. I'm just convinced, and I know I run the Yield Coach platform, and I'm trying to bring people up with me, but just don't lose focus that we're all going to be on our deathbed one day, and I don't think there's a lot of people on their deathbed that sit back and I wish I had 10 more units. I mean, it's just it's just not, that's not your it's not all you are. It's not your primary contribution to the world. So,
and this is one of the things, me being in EO, it's called Entrepreneur Organization. I'm not pitching that or anything. It's one of those organizations where there's people that are producing, 8-9 figures, multi-million-dollar companies, and I'm a small fish in a big pond when it comes to that. But the thing is, it's called the Hedonic Adaptation, or you could say the Hedonic treadmill. And what comes from that, exactly what you had pinpointed, is that yes, you want to constantly keep growing and keep improving, but then what happens is, as soon as you get to that next level, what happens is you want to go to another level. And what I've experienced from studying these people and just being more aware of things is many of them are unhappy, because what tends to happen, us as humans, and it's understanding our human nature, is if you have a goal that's further from you, it does cause, what is that, the not from the gravity, but the con to that is innately is there will be some unhappiness because you're wanting to get to this place and you're here. It just has that effect when it comes to that. So these are the types of things that now I'm just realizing and just figuring out how to navigate that. And one of the things is gratitude, expressing that, hey, I am good where I'm at, but then also it's, hey, I still want to grow more too and improve. So that's where I'm still trying to figure out what is that fine line, if there is a balance.
I love that. And there was an expression you've probably heard, but comparison is a thief of joy, or comparison is a joy thief. And it is tricky, because one of the only ways that we can kind of tell how we're doing is like apples to apples or apples to oranges, and that's a comparison. Look what we do in real estate. What's a property worth? We play apples to apples, and it's like we're surrounded by comparison. And I think you have to really, I think you want to grow out of like an innate reason, like a passion filled. That's like the whole knowing your why. I think you really need to have like a good intrinsic reason to grow. It can't, in my opinion, it really just can't be material. That's not sustainable. At some point, you're going to be disenfranchised with your houses and cars and travel. I just believe that. But I think if you're growing out of like a good why and a good intrinsic reason, then that's healthy. And then your gratitude comment is spot on. I think that part of why I started Yield Coach, and I have my video course is really just, it takes you from like Robert Kiyosaki to like about where I am. And part of why I did that 2-hour video course with some case studies was, in my opinion, that's what is going to make more people happy and free theoretically. Going from like where I am to wherever, the Grant Cardone level or whatever you're into, thousands and thousands and thousands of units. The increment of happiness from like 0 units to kind of where I am to that up to the grants and thousands, it gets really minuscule.
The law of diminishing returns.
It really does, and because I'm really focused on people, buying back their time, so to speak, and getting off of, the hedonistic wheels or the different. Change your mindset, have gratitude, free up your time. I mean, if I can help somebody find $2,000 to $10,000 a month and relatively passive. We know it's not truly passive unless you just invest as an LP, but and maybe you do just invest as an LP. I don't want to get too confusing on this show, but you might like your high income job, invest that money once you're accredited with a bunch of these different funds. They're all going to double or triple your money in 5 years or less. So, and you don't have to do anything. But the whole point is, I really like to see people move the needle to that like kind of stage 1 or stage 2 freedom. And then they can do what they want with their time, follow their passions. Like it's the wellness and happiness side that I probably care about the most.
Yeah, and I believe, this is my personal opinion, that comparing yourself to others is the worst thing that you can do because someone's always got a bigger boat. Someone's always, and who knows, and we're all different in different areas and how we were created. And I was just listening to Courage and Self-Esteem by Earl Nightingale. But just the sum total of all of this is that just doing what makes you happy, because we're in a culture, especially when it comes to America, that really pushes hustle, hustle, grow, 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 but is just looking at things from a bird's eye view. I see quite a bit of dysfunction and people that are just unhappy, and that's just how I view things, because I like to just I'm always working to become more aware. So that's just one thing I want to share with the audience, is just figuring out what makes you happy and just not following someone such as a Grant Cardone as a prime example mindlessly.
I totally agree. And I would encourage people to like dispel the notion so some coaches, I won't name any, they'll focus on you as the recipient of their education to become really upset, really focus on what you don't have, become so upset that it fuels you, almost like to rise up from like this disdain. And I'm like, oh my God, that is such an unhealthy notion to put into. I know why a coach might say that, because what you're really trying to do is like inspire action. But so my
I'd
dad
say for the short term. I'd say for the short term, yes, but for the long term, and that is what I've been able to use but I don't like going to that dark place, is what I call it. I like to pull more from the positivity side. But what were you saying?
Oh, well, my dad had this expression, and it was because he was a track coach for years and years, and he had state championship teams, and he would say, "Run to the light," which instead of from the darkness. And he was a religious guy, but I think it has context without religion. And it's like the fear is what we just talked about. The light is potential. It's what could be. It's opportunity. It's growth. It's maybe you and I doing something you never know what's going to happen in the future. It's all of the beautiful possibilities of life if you approach it properly with gratitude and open to opportunity, instead of like everything's sinking, everything's effed, I'm not doing enough, I'm not hustling. I mean, there's no way to live. So, it's a critical distinction.
Yeah, I can go down rabbit holes and hours of philosophy. I've truly just enjoyed it. And for anyone, that's just my personal experience here. Is yes, the business side and all that is good, but is philosophy, because let's say the book Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, who at one point in time, hundreds of years ago, the most powerful person on the planet, he actually documented his thoughts within an actual book. And it's very interesting that a lot of those problems that were going on hundreds of years ago are the same things that we're experiencing today. Of course, we've got things such as social media, but still the core of everything is still human nature. And it's just very interesting, and it just gives you a different awareness, which is one of the things I'm always working towards, because I know even still to this day is I've got blind spots and things that I'm not aware of. And once you become, and I believe it's Wayne Dyer that says this, is once you look at things, once you see, I forget exactly how it goes, is that when you see things and, oh man, I can't even remember the quote, but basically another quote is, once the mind is expanded with an idea, it can never go back to being the same. So I'll use that.
Well, and I agree with that, because some of these shifts, it's not just like a lens. It really is like the jelly's out of the tube, it's not going back, and you've passed, gone through the looking glass. So I did not expect to go so philosophical with you, Sterling, but I've really enjoyed it. Not to pivot straight back into hustle culture nonsense, but I do typically ask guests about, goals and where you're heading. Hey, and maybe your goal is just like enlightenment, and wellness. I think that's a totally respectable goal, but any goals you'd like to share with the audience?
So one, at this moment, I've been selling my holdings as a way to have dry powder, because I believe things are starting to shift in the market. So want to be prepared for that. Secondly is on just the path of just becoming more aware. So doing quite a bit of the Stoicisms, the Taoisms, Hedoism. So studying more the philosophical side, and then also traveling the world. And right now I'm practicing more Spanish. I'd say I'm intermediate, but I can speak it, but difícil, so difficult for me to hear it coming back. So that's one of the things, is just working more on me as a human being.
That's great. If we ever run into each other at like a conference or an event in the future, I'll bring my wife along. She's been doing a Duolingo Spanish app for like
Duolingo,
6 months.
love Duolingo.
Yeah, and I haven't seen her like really. She won't even use it when we go out for like Mexican food. She's like, no, that's embarrassing. I'm like, well, so I'm not actually sure she's learning, but I would love to put you two in the same room and let you try your Spanish out.
Yeah, if one thing that also helps too is italki, and that's just basically a site where you can hire someone on the other side, very affordable pricing. That basically what I do is I'll just schedule a specific time with them, multiple days, and we just sit and we just talk in Spanish. That's the best way to just throw myself in there as a way to learn too.
I totally agree. Immerse yourself. I think, because I got up to intermediate Spanish at Florida State, it was like a requirement for my history major, and the minute I was out of that classroom, lost it. I'm in Florida, but I'm in North Florida. If I were in South Florida, I probably could use it, but there's just not as much Spanish speaking just on the streets here. But well, as we kind of come up, a little bit closer to the hour, I have just a couple of closing questions. What are some of like your hobbies or interests or extracurriculars? You have shared a fair amount about yourself personally, but what are you into outside of investing?
I'd say I do boxing, so that's one. Also, I enjoy shooting guns, going to the shooting range, paintballing too. You probably can't see it if this is video format, but this past weekend, it may look like a hickey, but it's definitely not a hickey. So I got shot in the neck while I was doing paintballing, and as soon as I got shot, I was like, "All right, you guys, I'm out. You got me." So I wouldn't get shot again. So I do things such as that, and then also just taking time out of my day to just sit down and think. I've actually really enjoyed that, to where I'll just go on the porch or just go on a walk and just think about life, and so. That's what I've enjoyed more so, at just slowing down, because I've always been the go person, but now I've taken time to actually step back and actually think about what's important in life and what's going on in the world. So that's what I would say from a hobby side.
I like that. I know it might sound cliche, because your Bigger Pockets hosts also do jujitsu, but I did jiu-jitsu during law school, and then I took an 8-year gap, which is a big gap for grappling. I just got back in February, so we're recording essentially like September 1 here. And it's honestly just brutal. It's so much effort. It's so much pain. It's so much sweat. There's no air conditioning. It's just uncomfortable. But I find that by by doing something that hard and exhaustive, and maybe your boxing is like that too, it just wrings you out more than physically. And then when I come out, it takes me a little bit of time to find my equilibrium. When I leave the gym, drink some water, have some food. I have like such clear, now I'm physically tired at that point, but I have such clear vision, and it's so much easier for me to prioritize what I need to do next. It's like that really exhaustive cardio combative stuff. It just clears the noise, because there's no way you can think about like, how am I going to scale? Where's my next unit? Who should I call? You can't think about that while you're boxing or doing jiu-jitsu.
Or getting punched in the face. Yeah, because I do boxing where there's the cardio aspect, but also getting in the ring to spar. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm just thinking now is when I'm at the actual gym, that doesn't even come to mind. So it's a good way to just detach.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't follow Joe Rogan real closely, but he's a jiu-jitsu UFC guy. So he routinely talks about like just getting over that, just show up to the gym. No one wakes up every day and is like, I want to go get punched in the face or choked or armbarred by a stranger.
If they do, they're probably a psychopath or something. Yeah.
You know, and I'm not good enough yet to be able to say I'm going to go to the gym and choke and armbar everybody. It's just not the case. So I just have to suck it up, be humble, go in there as a humble student at a slightly older age, because I stopped for 8 years, and just deal with it. And it's humbling. And it just resets you. And I know this doesn't have to do with investing, but I think it has to do with wellness. Try to find something that is truly challenging. I don't think just like getting on a treadmill is quite going to do it. By having to do something that you like learn and develop a skill that is like exhaustive and challenging, I just think it's incredibly beneficial. You'll never regret it.
Yeah, and I believe every guy should have some combat sport in their back pocket. That's just one of my personal beliefs when it comes to that. So yeah, that's what I have on that. Jiu-jitsu, definitely enjoy. I haven't done jiu-jitsu, but I wrestled back in the day, which there is some wrestling involved with that.
For sure. Actually, it's funny when they, if you do a tournament and they'll have like a breakout, it'll be like white belts, and then it'll put in parentheses in a lot of tournaments, no wrestlers. So essentially, if you come in as a white belt, which everyone starts as a white belt, but you wrestled, let's say you wrestled in high school or beyond, you will still be a white belt, but it's like you've got like a little, like a metaphorical star by your name. Damn. Because and it's okay, but you're probably not going to stay white belt very long, because once you learn, that's hard to put a number on it, maybe like 20 moves, give or take, different positions. The way that you move your hips and you can grapple, and
you've got the foundation. You're
going to smoke some people that are already ahead of you, and they're going to be like, all right, stop embarrassing. Let's bump you up to blue. And then you'll hang out at blue for like years, because there's so much technical stuff to learn. But they don't like the new guy like smoking all the other people that have been there a year. So if you did get into it, the wrestling is very helpful. So you just got to guard your neck, because wrestlers like, they run in with and they get choked all the time. So,
I've seen that in the UFC quite a bit. Yep, exactly.
Guard the neck. Well, this has been great. Anything else you want the audience to know?
I would say that's pretty much it. We covered quite a bit the spectrum of things. So that's all I have for everyone. I do appreciate you listening to my story, and hope that you were able to get value from this. And those of you who are on the fence or just trying to figure out, okay, what's that next step to get started? You may have some fear and anxiety, or you may have some limiting beliefs that may be stopping you. Is that you got to start with mindset, but also one of the things that helped me was just finding a mentor, someone who has been there, done that, and figured out a way to offer value to them. And that's how I was able to get my very first deal with no money out of my pocket, and I learned on the job on someone else's dime.
Again, a great piece of advice right here at the end. I hope people stuck all the way through it. Sterling, where is the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, so you can find me, sterlingwhiteofficial.com. One more time, that is sterlingwhiteofficial.com. And I'm also on the YouTube. So just type in Sterling White, look for a bald, handsome guy, and I'll come right on up.
I love it. All right, everybody. Well, this has been a great episode. I know I personally enjoyed it. It's probably been one of my favorites so far, so I hope everybody else enjoyed it as well. As always, be sure to rate and subscribe so we can keep this show going. We're going to have great guests like Sterling in the future, and just see where this show goes. I'm really enjoying growing the community. All right, everybody. For the Yield Coach Show, this is Coach Brown signing off and reminding everybody to lace up and leave it all on the field. Yield Coach out.